Welcome everyone to another USI Tech Talk. Today we're going to be talking about containment systems and chemical resistant coatings. So over the next 10 minutes we'll go over how to pick the right containment system and the right chemical resistant coating for your specific application. And then we'll get into some questions at the end. So thank you for joining us. So the first step always when you're looking at chemical resistant coatings and containment is you want to identify your full stress stack, right? Chemical resistance is a big part of this equation, but it's only one part of that equation. A coating that's going to work somewhere might not work everywhere, and that total stress stack really is what makes it different. So what we need to figure out is exactly what all is the coating going to be asked to survive. So of course you have that chemistry question, right? What are the chemicals involved? But also you have temperature. You also have whether this is going to be an immersion system or if you're going to be experiencing splash. Is this a secondary containment? All of those things really matter when we're talking about chemical resistance and the coatings that you're going to be putting in there. The other one is it also going to have like any abrasion or impact, right? What are the full conditions that this container is going to be under? And then that last question is going to be, right, what's your substrate and what are your prep limits? Going a little bit more into detail, and the last one, of course, is downtime and your cure window, right? How long can you take the asset out of service, and how long is it going to take for it to go back into service? So you want to build out your stress stack, right? Going a little bit more into details of that, we need to ask about operating details, not just the chemical name or the pH, right? It's really easy to fall back on that, but you want to know the chemicals that's in there, the name of it, the blend that's being put in there. Does this go through a cleaning cycle? Right? Those cleaning agents are also chemicals. You want to make sure that you are protecting against that. And are there any byproducts that might be produced in this environment as well? You want to talk about the concentration, right? What's your worst case scenario or your spikes of your concentration and your actual regular operating range? And of course, you have your temperature. You have your normal operating temperature. Some systems have that peak operating temperature, and also you sometimes have that thermal shock where you're going very rapidly from one to the other. Uh, Contact type, of course, is also really important. Whether we're talking about immersion, is it splash, is it fumes, is it secondary containment? When we talk about secondary containments, it's really important to note, like, is it the kind of secondary containment that's sitting under something and someone's going to be walking through, right? Then you're talking about abrasion resistance against, people's feet, essentially, or even potentially equipment. What's the frequency, right? Is it going to be continuous immersion? Is it going to be batches that are going through this? Is it a wash down? Or is this something that's going to be getting that emergency exposure, like that secondary containment? And then, of course, our other stress. That could be abrasion, it could be UV, it could be pressure. Does it potentially need to be flexible? Does this container move? And is there traffic that goes over that? Again, all those things are going to go into, are we picking the right coating? How are we picking that right coating? And what all are we protecting against? So you want to know your asset and your substrate, right? Your selection changes slightly when you talk about different substrates. There's a lot of fantastic primers out there that'll allow different coatings to go on a lot of different surfaces. But when we were talking about steel, you want to make sure you're getting the right blast profile. You want to make sure that you're testing for those soluble salts. That you're repairing any existing pitting or corrosion. Do you need to smooth over any of those welds? Do you have other edges? What's the type of steel? A lot of those things are going to go into your product selection at the end of the day. We're talking about concrete. What kind of moisture is it typically sitting at? What pH is it sitting at? Does it have any cracks or outgassing contamination? It You might even have to ask the question, is this built into a wall? Is it underground where it might be experiencing some hydrostatic pressure? There are solutions for all of these things, but it does go into providing the best outcome for your asset. Existing coatings, we typically do not want to be coating over something that is incredibly damaged. Now, I have on here and identify compatibility. We do have a lot of systems that are made intentionally so that you have two colors, right? You have an underlying color, let's call that blue or red, and then you have an overcoat that's typically gray. And you can go the other way around. But the reason we do it that way is you can peek into that container when you're doing your inspection and very easily see, hey, is there damage in here? Am I seeing that other color peek through? Is it time to start recoating? And these systems are built in a way that it's easy to recoat, right? We know the product that's in there. We know that we can go in there and rough up some of those surfaces and apply another coat. If the coating's been in there for a really long time, a lot of times you'll see that it's damaged beyond that. And you're going to have to blast the whole coating off. And of course, you want to look at your geometry, right? Your edges, pits, seams, bolts, confined space. What's the access look like? This will go into the product selection because there are a lot of great products that we can put on that will be able to be sprayed. There's also a lot of fantastic products that can only be brush or rolled. If you have a lot of really interesting geometry in your space, we're going to have to stick to some of those products that can be sprayed. And I have on here, and I swear I stole this from somewhere. I'm not exactly where I took it from. I can't find it. But great chemistry can't overcome poor surface preparation. It's really important when we get into the coding side of things that we're looking at our TDSs, we're following those surface prep, and we're following every single step that's outlined in there. I have this little triangle here, right? And usually we start with inspection, right? You want to inspect the asset, do your soluble salt test where you need to, do your moisture check, your pH checks, fix any cracks or in concrete. If you have steel structures that are damaged, you want to be repairing those. There are some fantastic epoxy repairs that we also provide that will be able to fix those cracks, fix that pitting, and allow you to build up some of the wall loss that you have before you put your coating on. The next step is to prepare, right? You want to make sure you're following all of those preparation steps. This is hyper important, especially if you want a really long-term solution. Most coatings fail because of that surface prep not being done properly. Or well, most failures are because of that surface prep not being done properly. And then you get into your application stage, right? You want to follow all your application steps, but it's really important that we add this last step in here that we're verifying. Right. There's a lot of inspection equipment out there. There's really great inspectors that'll be able to go through and make sure that you don't have any holidays, that you don't have any pinholes in your coating, and that you are, ready to put that into service. And then the final step I have on here is you want to have your first maintenance, your first inspection scheduled when you go back into service. That's really important to make sure that you are addressing any issues that arise quickly. And that you're inspecting in a routine and you're going through and then sometimes you're going to go right back into this process, so I kind of have it set up like that triangle. But all of these things are really important, especially if you want a long lasting asset in any environment. Now here at USI, this is where we get into product selection. We offer many fantastic solutions that are going to be able to cover pretty much any type of environment out there. And I have a couple brands that we represent here, and this is by far not all of them. But depending on what your exact situation is, right? What that pressure is, what that temperature is, the chemical mix, is it going to be experiencing heavy abrasion, that kind of things. We're going to be looking into a lot of different products. We also have some fantastic products that go really, really high temperature that are also chemical resistant. So the really important thing when you're selecting that coating is, there's not one solution for every problem. Every detail matters, and to talk to an expert that knows about these products, that knows what you're going to need in those specific areas, and more importantly, the right questions to ask when we're assessing your asset. That's going to bring us to questions. Give me 1 second here, and I will open up microphones. You can send them in through chat. You can open up your microphone and just say it out loud. however you want to serve up those questions. Looks like we do have one that was chatted in. So our first one is, how do you address existing cracks or damaged concrete before applying a chemical resistant lining? Bobby, that's a fantastic question. Typically, you're going to see you're going to want to knock out anything that's loose in those cracks. We have a lot of great products that will be able to repair those that are also more chemical resistant than the concrete around it. We have lightweight concrete repair systems that you can actually build up on a wall without having to use a form. And we have some that are made for really heavy traffic. It depends on the exact environment that you're putting it in, similar to a chemical resistant coating, but you would want to clear out any of that existing any loose concrete. We are going to want to scuff up that surface, and then we would put a repair patch in there before putting the lining on. Doug, anything to add to that?
One other thing, Bobby, you might want to keep in mind is to saw cut about a 1/4 inch deep around the edges to give it a firm bond to the repair. And when possible, use a concrete repair system that comes with a primer to penetrate into the existing concrete and give you a tenacious adhesion.
Right. Any other questions for us today when it comes to chemical resistant coatings or linings? Or anything else?
Chris, one thing to consider is if we're doing a steel tank, a lot of people forget the value of stripe coating, and it's best to stripe coat first with a brush to make sure you get good penetration into the welds and the sharp edges, and then come back over with your first coat of chemical resistant lining before the overcoat window is exceeded.
And I've heard someone mention this before. With that stripe coating, you don't wait for the cure window, right? You do the stripe coating and then essentially immediately go in, and it just adds that little bit of extra film thickness around those kind of abnormal geometries, right?
Typically, that's the best practice. Is you're not waiting for it to cure. You're just looking to let it tack up a little bit. It's great to see so many people on the chat today. And again, if you have a question for Chris that you've been wanting to ask or for our Unconventional Solutions team, feel free to jot it down and chat it over to Chris or to just open up your mic and raise your hand.
And if you think of something, after this, that's what I always do. 10 minutes later, I'll be like, oh, what about this? You can reach out to us. You can reach me directly at cs@usigroups.com. You can also chat us through our website, which is usigroups.com. Or you can give us a call at 248-735-7000.
Well, thank you everybody for joining in today. And when's our next event going to be, Chris?
So our next Tech Talk is going to be, and I'm going to pull up my calendar real quick. It's going to be next month. We do it on the third Wednesday of every month. So it's the 19th of August at 11:45, and we're going to be talking about sustainable maintenance, green solutions for repairs and cleanup.
Sounds exciting. Looking forward to seeing many of you next month, if not sooner.
Thank you for joining, everybody, and have a great day.